I've got nothing.
Nothing?
Nothing. I watched that Clive Owen King Arthur movie last night.
Done, print it!
And thus, we got Sonic and the Black Knight. I joke, but this is certainly out there for a Sonic game concept. It's the second in the 2-game storybook series for Nintendo Wii, launched in the aftermath of Yuji Naka leaving Sega to chase his dreams of financial crime, and of course in the wake of Sonic 06 shattering the franchise's reputation to pieces. I think that last part is vital to understanding this game, and this weird era of Sonic that we had between 06 and Generations. It seemed that if you had an idea, no matter how bizarre or out there it was, they were willing to give it a spin. Pun very much intended. And so, in 2009, after the very questionable Sonic and the Secret Rings and Sonic Unleashed, we got this, Sonic and the Black Knight. Inspired by, and loosely based on the fables of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, the game's setting sees Sonic summoned to the world of fantasy by Melina, Merlin's Rule 63 counterpart, to defeat and overthrow a corrupt King Arthur. Also, there's sand in that chili dog. Pretty sure that's zero Mark Ruffalo's right there. After a quaint cutscene in which Melina explains that Sonic needs to speak to the Lady of the Lake in order to be powerful enough to challenge King Arthur, it dives immediately into a training level. It's nothing too strenuous, however it is here that the driving feature of this game bears immediately to light. It is, quote unquote, on rails. Sonic is locked into a forward trajectory, with most every move and attack designed to keep him pushing ahead. It's certainly odd, and takes a minute to get used to. Unpopular take, I don't hate this. You've got to keep in mind, this game was released in that fallout from Sonic 06. Yuji Naka was gone, the fanbase was screaming for something to take the bad taste away, and Sonic Team's budget had been slashed to the bone. Frankly, I don't blame them for trying something completely different. It's not awful to control Sonic, for the most part. It's got a learning curve, that's for sure, but the problems aren't really with controls this time around. The deeper we get into the game, the more the real issue becomes apparent, and that is difficulty, or rather, the lack thereof. The opening tutorial level is over in a matter of minutes, and so is every subsequent level. It really takes the weight out of the whole scenario at hand when you're supposed to be fighting through an oppressive enemy when you're just blasting through everything. Quite literally in some cases, as a large number of fights can be avoided by just jumping clean over them. And when these levels can be done in, say, less than a minute, the elephant in the room becomes rather apparent rather quickly. Honestly, a lot of these stages feel like a speed stage from another Sonic game with a medieval theme slapped on, with the occasional random change of pace, like a 2D level, or a level with a certain clear condition, such as giving the townspeople a certain number of rings. They're also rather easy in terms of a challenge, so yeah. As the plot advances, you'll have to fight the Knights of the Round Table, who all happen to be this universe's version of Knuckles, Shadow, and Blaze the Cat, and none of them pose a serious threat. Oh, by the way, Amy Rose is the Lady of the Lake, and Tails is a random blacksmith. Justice for my man Tails. Defeating each boss nets you a legendary sword that you cannot use. Instead, you are to use Caliburn, who, talks to you in a condescending tone, constantly. I'm pretty sure I had a maths teacher who used this exact tone of voice in secondary school, and he was a massive wanker. But alas, I digress. Through the plot, Sonic eventually commits enough heroic acts to be dubbed Knight of the Wind by the Lady of the Lake, and is to take on King Arthur in an epic duel. Now's probably a good time to mention that King Arthur's power is being drawn from the scabbard of Excalibur. Not the sword itself, just, the sword's holder, which is a little bit like saying that you can get drunk from holding an empty bottle of scotch. The duel is, weirdly enough, the first bit of the game I actually had difficulty with. You have to gain enough speed around Arthur's obstacles to jump on his horse, or you can just get close and do a homing attack, and then you engage in sword-to-sword combat with him. It's not that the game doesn't make it clear. No, it quite literally tells you when to waggle, it's just that when you get here, the game experiences some pretty heavy delay and slowdown, making this part a lot harder than it would ordinarily be. It's rather weird because before now, the technical side of things had been mostly fine. No game-breaking bugs, no clipping, no nonsense. But for whatever reason, it's right here that the whole house sinks into the sand. It's kind of impressive for a Sonic game, actually. It's probably the least buggy out of this era. It's also the first part of the game where I've had to do the infamous Wii waggle, which is odd because for the most part so far, I've actually been able to just get away with simple flicking motions. But no, here it's full-on shake weight time. I am not doing that motion. I know it's not Susan anymore, but New Boy would kill me. After about an hour of attempts, I pulled through, and my reward is credits. Yes, that's gotta be it, right? We're done here? Well, actually, no, which is probably for the best because we've been playing this game for what, 3 hours and change? Not very long at all, no. As it turns out, oh no, Merlina is actually a baddie, and that King Arthur we just beat up was actually an illusion summoned by the original Merlin as a way to rule over the kingdom in an attempt to prevent it from ending. Come again? You're telling me that existence is dependent on the monarchy? I'm getting very strong Camilla vibes. Realizing the folly of their ways and siding with Sonic and Caliburn, it's now time for the 3 Knights of the Round Table to play a level each and use their sacred swords to forge a seal over Camelot. These levels are, well, there's no way around it. They're actually levels. They're all full length with none of this minute and change nonsense. Plus, they're actually challenging in parts. Honestly, it's the best part of the game so far, and playing as each knight is a ton of fun. They're all unique, and I wish I had more time with them, but this is all we get. Sonic's final levels are a 2-parter. The first is a straightforward run to the end, but the second, in an attempt to prove Sonic's worth as a knight or something, I don't friggin' know, has him take on a dragon. This is easier said than done, as the dragon ends up being an exercise in dodging, and it's here where you realise the controls really aren't responsive enough for this kind of quick movement. It's not hard, but I feel like this took me way more time than it should have, due to me constantly messing up at the third and final phase over and over again. Oddly enough, this isn't the first time Sonic's had issues at third base. I meant the baseball game, what the hell are you guys on about? Finally, it's time for the final boss. In her rage, Merlina turns Sonic into sashimi and smashes Caliburn, only for it to awake Sonic's true form in this universe, with Caliburn as Excalibur. Kind of a neat little Super Sonic inspired thing going on here. The boss fight is visually cool, but if I'm honest, it's a total letdown because it is very easy. Once you realise you just need to do homing attacks once you get close enough, she falls apart, and then it's just rinse and repeat until you're done. Bingo bango, we're done here. For real this time. Sonic is revealed as the true King Arthur, able to wield Excalibur, goes back to his own universe, and we get a little Mandela effect for all the furries of Mobius. I didn't hate this game. I wasn't really sure what to expect going in, but I can at least say it's not bad. I can also say it's not good, but it's not bad. I know I'm repeating myself here, but it really is worth remembering that this game was developed in a pretty weird environment. It's something very different from Sonic Team, and sure, it's not great, but it's also far from awful. On the bad game scale, from something that's, say, aggressively mediocre, like your average Call of Duty at one end, to something that's actually tripe, like, say, Right to Hell Retribution at the other end, this is closer to the Doritos and Mountain Dew. Should you play it? Probably not, but you could do a hell of a lot worse. It does, for sure, feel like an overblown tech demo at times, but it's still significantly better than Sonic R. Not that it was a particularly high bar to beat. Speaking of beating, not to keep drumming on a dead horse, but we're getting awfully close to 1,000, and you know what that means. Good night.